My stepmother slapped me in the kitchen on Christmas Eve. Dad just poured more wine. 5 minutes later, the family froze at the sight of 118 missed calls. It was the signal for the trap I'd set. You think you guessed the ending? I did too, until the name on the will lit up under the kitchen light. My name is Elena Whitford. I am 38 years old, and my life is built on schedules. I am an operations manager at Halcyon Metrics, which is a corporate way of saying I fix problems before they become catastrophes. My world is one of spreadsheets, logistics, and clearly defined outcomes. I live in Northbridge, in a white clapboard house with dark green shutters, the kind of house that looks comforting on a postcard. My refrigerator door is the real map of our lives. Mason's soccer schedule, the sanitation pickup days, a grocery list that always has oat milk and bananas on it. Mason is my son. He is 12, existing in that bright, fleeting space between childhood and whatever comes next. He has my eyes and his father's easy smile. My primary directive, above all else, is his safety. He moves through our home with the chaotic energy of a small hurricane, leaving sneakers by the door and science projects on the counter. He is the anchor point of my world, the one part of the equation that must always be protected. My husband is Colton Hale. He owns an HVAC dealership over in Riverton, the next town over, for 14 years. Our marriage has been a partnership built on the practical. We are a team. He handles the physical mechanics of heating and cooling, and I handle the abstract logistics of a tech firm. We met in our 20s, and we built this life together, piece by piece. His hands are calloused and strong. He can fix anything that whirs, clicks, or hums. I trusted that. I trusted him. My mother died 5 years ago. It was a long, quiet illness that hollowed out our family and left my father, Graham Whitford, rattling around the big house he'd shared with her for 4 decades. Dad is a good man, but a quiet one, and the silence of that house amplified his loneliness. He was a man adrift. Then, last year, came Margot Vale. Margot blew into my father's life like a warm front, all bright efficiency and confident charm. She was a realtor, or perhaps had been, with a knack for seeing potential in tired properties. She saw potential in my father. They were married 6 months later, a small courthouse affair that I was told about the week before. Margot, my new stepmother, was now the lady of the house I grew up in. This Christmas was to be the first one with her as Mrs. Whitford. My mother's traditions had always been sacred. Our house, our tree, our chaos, but Margot had insisted, in her breezily firm way, that it was time to properly connect as a new family, and so Christmas was moved to their house, my father's house. The chill began subtly. It wasn't a sudden storm. It was the slow drop in temperature, the kind that seeps into your bones before you realize you need a sweater. We went over for a pre-holiday dinner, just to plan the main event. I walked into the home I knew every floorboard of, and it felt immediately, quietly wrong. The air smelled different, not of my mother's faint rose water and lemon polish, but of something sharper, like cinnamon and expensive potpourri. "The Wi-Fi password?" I asked, pulling out my phone to check an email from work. My father, halfway to the liquor cabinet, paused. "Oh, right. Margot, darling, what's the new password?" "It's Vale Manor, dear. All one word. Capital V, capital M," she called from the kitchen. I typed it in. Vale Manor. My mother's password had been our old dog's name and the year I was born. A small thing, easily changed, a necessary update, but it felt like a locked door where one had never been. Then I noticed the mantelpiece. For my entire life, it had been a chaotic, happy jumble of mismatched frames. My kindergarten graduation, Mom and Dad's wedding photo in a heavy silver frame, a blurry picture of Mason's first steps, all of it was gone. In its place was a curated, symmetrical display. Sleek, identical black frames. There was Dad and Margot on their wedding day. Center stage. There was a professional shot of the two of them at some charity gala. There was a new, framed photo of Mason, from a day I didn't recognize when Margot had taken him for ice cream, and there, on the bottom shelf of the bookcase beside the fireplace, almost hidden by a large, waxy orchid, was the old silver frame with my parents' wedding photo. The glass was smudged. It had been moved down, demoted. I felt a sharp physical pang in my chest. I looked at my father, but he was busy telling Colton about a new set of golf clubs. I said nothing. I was 38. I was not going to be the petty, jealous daughter. The real test, the one that made the fine hairs on my arms stand up, came at the dining table. Margot was setting out coasters, her movements quick and decisive. "I thought we'd do place cards, just for fun," she chirped. In our family, seating was unspoken law. After Mom passed, I had naturally taken her seat at the head of the table when we ate at Dad's. It was the seat facing the kitchen, the one that kept the flow of the meal going. It was my place. I moved toward it automatically, my hand resting on the smooth wood of the chair. "Oh, Elena, darling, no," Margot said, intercepting me with a light, steering hand on my elbow. Her rings were cold against my skin. "I've put you right here, next to Colton, so you two can be cozy. Graham will sit here." She patted the chair at the other end. "And I'll take this one. It's just so much easier for me to serve from this end." It was perfectly logical. It was impeccably polite, and it was an eviction. I sat where she told me. I watched her take my mother's seat. She looked at my father and smiled, and he smiled back, raising his glass to her. "To Margot," he said, "for bringing order to our chaos." I unfolded my napkin. The fabric felt stiff. The chill wasn't just in my father's house. It was starting to creep into mine. Colton had been working late, a lot. At first, I hadn't questioned it. Winter was coming, and as he always said, it was peak heater season. Everyone's furnace picks the first cold snap to die. He'd said, rubbing my shoulders as he came in long after dark. "I've got to manage the crews, make sure the calls are routed. It's just a busy time." But the late nights stretched from 1 week into 3. He started smelling different. Not of grease and refrigerant, but faintly of a cologne I didn't recognize and the stale, manufactured air of a hotel conference room. He was tired, but in a wired, distracted way. One night, I waited up. The clock on the microwave clicked past 11:30. Mason was asleep. The house was silent. I was tracking a shipment delay at Halcyon, my screen glowing in the dark. When he finally came in, he flinched when he saw me at the kitchen island. "Jesus, you scared me." "Late one," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Yeah. Big commercial install over in Port Lumen went sideways. Had to drive out there myself. The new guys messed up the ductwork." He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm exhausted. I'm heading up." He kissed the top of my head, but it was a fleeting gesture. He was already halfway up the stairs. "I trust my husband. I want my father to be happy. I am a reasonable woman, an operations manager who believes in data and logical explanations." But that night, sitting alone in my kitchen, I felt a single, thin thread of suspicion pull tight. It connected the new Wi-Fi password to the demoted photograph, and the cold seat at the dining table to the unfamiliar scent on my husband's jacket. It was a pattern, faint and delicate as frost on a window pane, and for the first time, I was beginning to see a shape in it. The suspicion was a thread. A week later, it became a receipt. It wasn't even a piece of paper. It was a sterile digital line item on our joint credit card statement, delivered via an email notification I checked every Friday morning. Crownbriar Lodge, Port Lumen, $118.45. The date matched the night Colton had come home late, the night he claimed the commercial install went sideways. I waited until that evening, after Mason was in his room with headphones on, his video game providing a distant soundtrack of muffled explosions. Colton was in the kitchen, pouring a glass of water. "How was the Crownbriar Lodge?" I asked. I didn't look up from the mail I was sorting. The sound of the water pitcher hitting the granite counter was louder than necessary. "What?" The credit card statement came through, the hotel in Port Lumen. He let out a short, sharp breath. a huff of mild irritation. Right, yeah, what a nightmare. I told you. The ductwork was a total disaster. The crew was hours behind. It got too late to drive back, so I grabbed the cheapest room I could find. I was out by 5 a.m. the next morning. His calendar, which I had already checked, confirmed a port lumen install blocked out for that entire day. His story was consistent. It was almost perfect. But the charge wasn't for $118. It was for a specific room service charge that posted at 11:34 p.m. for 2 glasses of wine and a dessert. The hotel itself had been billed separately by his company card. This charge was from the bar, on our personal card. I said, "Must have been exhausting." "It was," he said. He drank his water in one long pull. "Just another fire to put out." He kissed my temple and went upstairs, leaving his empty glass on the counter for me to find. The following Sunday, we had dinner at my father's house. As I was helping clear the plates, Margot stopped me, placing a hand on my arm. Her skin was warm, her nails perfectly manacled. "Elena, darling, I found this and thought of you," she said. She produced a bottle of red wine, heavy and dark, with an elaborate label from a vineyard I didn't recognize. "It's a rather complex blend, very adult." She smiled, a bright, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I know you have a very mature palate. Not everyone can appreciate it." I took the bottle. It felt heavy, like an anchor. It was not a gift. It was a boundary. It was a polite, well-lit fence telling me I was a visitor, a contemporary to be managed, not a daughter of the house. I was mature, which meant I was old, and I was separate from the new, vibrant life she was building with my father. "Thank you, Margot," I said. "That's very thoughtful." I put the bottle in my bag. I would never drink it. Later, I was on the porch looking for a signal when I heard my father's voice booming from the front yard. He was talking to our old neighbor, Mr. Henderson. "She's just been a miracle, Jim, a total miracle. I tell you, your mother," he said, gesturing back toward the house where Margot was, "is just brilliant at balancing the household. I haven't felt this taken care of in years." Your mother. The phrase hit me like a physical shove. He had never called my own mother that when speaking to me. It was always Mom or your mom. This new phrasing was a deliberate, clumsy insertion, an attempt to graft her into a history where she did not belong. I stepped back into the shadows of the porch, my phone gripped tight. There was a specific set of crystal highball glasses my mother had loved. Heavy, cut with deep facets. Margot now used them for everything. I noticed a pattern. When Colton was over, he and Margot would often find a reason to be in the kitchen alone for a few minutes. A quiet word about the dinner schedule, a question about the wine chiller. Their voices were always low, confidential. After these brief meetings, I would see one of those crystal glasses, sitting on the counter near the espresso machine, suddenly empty. It was never refilled. It was their private toast, a shared secret in plain sight. The tension in our own home was becoming thick, a humid, unbreathable air. Mason felt it. He was 12, and 12-year-olds are barometers for atmospheric pressure. "Mom," he asked one Tuesday, shifting his backpack on his shoulders, "is it cool if I stay at Sam's house tonight? We have that big science project, and maybe Friday too?" His dad said he'd take us to the new arcade. I looked at his face, so desperate for normalcy, for a place where the adults were not speaking in clipped, quiet tones. I wanted to pull him close, to tell him I would fix it, but I couldn't. The best I could do was let him go. "That sounds great, honey," I said, forcing a bright tone. "Text me when you get there." He bounded out the door, and the silence he left behind was heavy and cold. The next day at Halcyon Metrics, I was in the copy room running the quarterly logistics reports. It was gray and quiet, just the rhythmic churn of the printer. I had sent my report to the network printer, but the machine spat out an extra page first. Something stuck in the print queue from another user. I almost threw it away. It was a draft sales quote, but the logo at the top made me stop. Hail HVAC. It was a quote for a full system replacement, A big commercial job. My eyes scanned the details, landing on the electronic signature at the bottom, Colton Hale, and then the location, Port Lumen. The date on the draft was the exact date of the Crown Briar Lodge bill. He hadn't been there to fix a mistake. He had been there pitching a massive new contract, a contract he had never mentioned. I folded the paper, my hands perfectly steady, and slipped it into my portfolio. The feeling of being managed, of being politely excluded, sharpened. Margot had created a new family text group. She called it Circle of Joy. It was all bright, cheerful messages. Dad and I are trying that new bistro tonight. Found the perfect tree. But I was not in all the circles. I learned about my father's doctor appointment because I saw the reminder on his kitchen calendar. I learned about the neighbor's retirement party when I saw the photos Margot posted. I was in the circle of joy, but I was not in the loop. The final piece clicked into place on a Thursday. I had stopped by my father's house to drop off some mail that had been sent to my address by mistake. He and Margot were just leaving. "Oh, Elena. Perfect timing," my father said, fumbling with his keys. "We're just off to see Lyle." Lyle Bertram was our family's estate lawyer. He had been for 30 years. "Everything okay?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Oh, fine, my father said, a little too quickly. "Just a small technical update. Lyle's office sent a note. Wants us both to come in and sign off. You know, housekeeping." He was looking at Margot when he said, "Us." Margot smiled and adjusted the collar of his coat. "Just tidying things up, darling. We won't be long." I watched them get into the car. Margot in the driver's seat. A lawyer doesn't call two people in for a technical update on one person's will unless the second person is being granted power or access. I went home. I sat at my kitchen island, the same spot where I had confronted Colton. The house was silent. Mason was at soccer practice. I opened my laptop. I left the mail unsorted. I opened a new, secure spreadsheet. I created columns: date, time, event, discrepancy, evidence. I entered the hotel bill. I entered Colton's explanation. I entered the room service charge. I uploaded a scan of the printed quote from the office. I noted the date of the wine bottle, the exact phrasing Margot used. I recorded the date and time of my father's comment to Mr. Henderson. I noted the lawyer's meeting, and that Margot was present. My hands were not shaking. I was not angry. I was not sad. I was an operations manager, and the system was flashing red. I was just organizing the data, stacking the dishes in the sink, one by one, before I began to wash. My spreadsheet was no longer just a list. It was a map. I titled the file, Routine versus Reality. The columns were rigid. Date. Claimed routine. Observed reality. Source Colton. Source Margot. It was the most logical thing I could do. When the world tilts, you create data points. The line item for the Crown Briar Lodge was the first entry. I needed to close the loop. During a slow afternoon at Halcyon, I used a burner number from a web app, a tool we sometimes used for vetting new international vendors, and called the hotel's front desk. I kept my voice breezy, professional. "Hi, I'm calling from Hale HVAC, just handling some expense reconciliation for my boss, Colton Hale. I'm missing a folio for a stay he had last month, and I just need to confirm the dates." The receptionist, sounding young and bored, tapped on her keyboard. "Hale, Hale, got him. He's a returning guest, so he's saved in our system. Looks like we have a few stays for him. One in October, one last month. Which date did you need?" My breath hitched. Returning guest. Not a one-time emergency stop. A few stays. "Actually," I said, my voice hardening just a fraction. "That's all I needed. Just confirming he's in the system. Thank you." I disconnected the call. I entered the new data point into observed reality. The next weekend, I was at my father's house, tasked with finding an old tax document he insisted was in my mother's former home office. Margot was out at a charity luncheon. The house was quiet. I found the tax papers, but I was drawn to the bedroom. My mother's cherrywood jewelry box was still on the dresser, but it had been pushed to the side, eclipsed by Margot's large, modern leather case. I opened the old box. The velvet lining was worn. It smelled faintly of cedar and my mother's perfume. I was looking for one thing. It was a simple, heavy silver barrette, a clip my father had given her the year I was born, engraved with her initials, E. Elena Whitford, my namesake. It was gone. The impression where it always lay was empty. I felt a cold, sharp anger, precise as a pinprick. I closed the box. 2 days later, the Circle of Joy text group lit up. Margot had posted a photo. It was a selfie of her and 2 other women at the luncheon, all 3 holding champagne flutes. "Such a wonderful time for a wonderful cause," she had typed. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek, confident twist, and holding that twist in place, gleaming under the restaurant's lighting, was my mother's silver clip. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. The engraving was unmistakable. She was wearing it. She had taken it from the box and was wearing it in public as her own. I saved the image. I added it to the spreadsheet. At work, my operations at Halcyon Metrics suddenly collided with my secret investigation. Our building manager forwarded me an email chain from the procurement department. We were due for a massive HVAC upgrade in the spring. "Elena," his email read, "can you look at this? This new vendor, Hale HVAC, just sent an unsolicited bid that's 30% under the next lowest competitor. It's almost too good to be true. Can you vet them? See if their capacity matches the offer?" My stomach turned to ice. I scrolled down the chain. It was a quote from Colton's dealership, offering a deep end-of-year discount for the entire Halcyon Metrics campus. It was aggressive, far below market value. He was trying to buy his way into my workplace, and then I saw it, at the bottom of the recipient list, almost hidden, a CC to an email address I had never seen, mvale@homewell live. Me, Vol, Margot Vale. Homewell. A quick search showed Homewell. Live was a dead domain, a privacy-protected email service. This was their private channel. My husband and my stepmother were in business. He was laundering his reputation through my company, and she was his silent partner. That night, Mason was bursting with excitement. He unrolled a poster on the kitchen table, a complex diagram of circuits and gears. "Mom, look! Mr. Henderson gave me a B+ on the concept, but he said the components for the advanced build are super expensive." He was vibrating with energy. "But it's okay. I told Margot about it at Dad's house, and she said it was brilliant. She said she'd sponsor the entire robotics kit. The one with the real microprocessor. Isn't that amazing?" I looked at my son's bright, hopeful face. He was so proud. Margot was buying his affection, positioning herself as the patron, the provider of the things his supposedly practical mother, had to budget for. I forced a smile. That's incredibly generous, honey. Wow. I know, right? She's so cool." "Yes," I said, my voice thin. "She is. Make sure you write her a thank you note." I was keeping him safe, but I couldn't protect him from their influence. I could only contain him, keeping him on the clean side of the line I was drawing. The small violations began to stack up, like objects in a hoarder's house. I went back to my father's, needing to see the mantelpiece again. The demoted photo of my parents. I picked it up. The heavy silver frame was gone completely. My mother's wedding photo was now encased in the same generic, shiny black frame as all of Margot's. It looked cheap, trapped. I ran my thumb over the glass. It was loose. I could see a smear of cleaning fluid caught in the corner and something else. A long, thin scratch across the surface of the photograph itself, right across my mother's smile, as if it had been forced into the new frame with a careless, sharp tool. The final blow came not as a whisper, but as a formal, professional phone call. It happened on a Monday morning. I was at my desk, mapping out logistics for the first quarter. My desk phone rang, an external line. "Elena Whitford? This is David from Pine and Quill Bank, in the mortgage department." "This is she," I said, my focus still on the screen. "Great, ma'am. I'm just calling for a routine verbal confirmation. We're processing the final paperwork for a line of credit against the property at Whitford Lane, and we just need to verify your co-signature on the supplemental application before we move to disbursement." The world stopped. The cursor on my screen stopped blinking. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice perfectly level, cold. "What line of credit?" The banker stuttered. The application filed by Graham Whitford and Margot Vale Whitford. You are listed as a consenting party, co-signing on the release of equity. We have your signature on file, but it's policy to call." "I have signed nothing," I said. "Oh," David said, his professional polish gone. Well, it's right here. Let me email you the signature page, just for verification." A second later, a PDF landed in my inbox. I opened it. There was the bank's letterhead. There was a line for my father, a line for Margot, and there was a line at the bottom, "Elena Whitford Hale, consenting heir." Beside it was a signature. It was a good forgery. It was my name, in a looping, confident script that was almost mine, but not mine. My blood ran cold. They were not just moving pictures. They were not just changing Wi-Fi passwords. They were stealing my father's house, and they were using my name to do it. I hung up on the banker. I forwarded the email to my private address. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with a terrible, clarifying rage. I called Rhea Porter. We had been in the same dorm at college. She was now a partner in financial law, the kind of lawyer who dismantled fraudulent shell companies for sport. I didn't say hello. "Rhea, it's Elena. I have a problem." I laid it out in 3 minutes. The will meeting, the suspicious HVAC bid at my own company, the forged signature on a mortgage application. I spoke in bullet points. Rhea was silent for a beat. Her voice, when it came, was all business. "Elena, listen to me. You do not call the bank back. You do not talk to your father. You do not confront Colton or that woman. You saw nothing. You received no email. You are a ghost. You back up that PDF and the email from your procurement department. You back up everything, and you do not move until I tell you to. Do you understand?" "Yes," I said. "Don't touch it. Just back it up. We let them think they're smart. We let them complete the transaction in their heads." I hung up. I left my office. I went to a big box store an hour before closing. I purchased 2 identical, high-capacity USB drives, paying in cash. That night, I backed up the spreadsheet, the audio file of the call to the hotel, the photo of Margot wearing the clip, the HVAC email chain, and the forged bank document. One drive went into the locked fire safe in my office at Halcyon. The other, I sealed in a plastic freezer bag and tucked deep into the insulation of an old, forgotten cooler bag on the highest shelf of our pantry, behind the holiday-themed paper plates. I closed the pantry door. I knew anyone who could count the spoons in my house would think they could count me. The spreadsheet was not enough. Data points could be argued, dismissed as coincidence, or buried in legal motions. Forgery was a crime, but the PDF was a sterile copy. I needed the living act. I needed to see the conspirators in their habitat. I needed proof of the alliance, the quiet confidence that only comes when 2 people believe, absolutely, that no one is watching. I bought the cameras online, using a prepaid gift card and having them delivered to a private mail locker. They were unremarkable. 2 white, dual-port USB wall chargers, the kind you see in every airport and coffee shop. They were mundane, and they were perfect. The lens was a pinprick, invisible unless you were looking for it. Installation required precision. I chose a Sunday afternoon. When I knew Dad and Margot were at their golf club's weekly brunch, I used my old key. The house was silent, smelling of that sharp cinnamon potpourri. My hands did not shake. This was not a violation. It was a retrieval. I was an operations manager diagnosing a critical system failure. The first camera went into the kitchen, in the socket above the counter where the coffee machine was. It was the central hub. It faced the island, the refrigerator, and the doorway to the dining room. It was where Margot held court, where the crystal glasses were filled and emptied. The second went into the hallway, plugged into an outlet near the baseboard. It had a clear view of the front door and the staircase. It would log every entrance and exit. I was careful. I placed nothing in a private room, not in a bedroom or a bathroom. I was collecting evidence of a conspiracy, not of personal lives. The law, as Rhea had explained, was particular about that. I activated both. I linked them to a new, anonymously created cloud storage account. The subscription was paid for with another gift card. I set the motion detection to high sensitivity, then I logged in on my phone, saw the two clear, wide-angle views of my father's home, and I logged out. I sent the credentials to Rhea Porter in a secure message with a single subject line, Contingency Package Alpha. The trap was set. Now I just had to be gone. The opportunity came 4 days later. I announced it at home over dinner, my voice a mask of professional exhaustion. Halcyon is doing a full end-of-year physical inventory. I told Colton. Mason was at the table, focused on his pasta. My team has to supervise the night shift. I'm going to have to pull an all-nighter on Friday. I probably won't be home until 3, maybe 4 in the morning. Colton looked up, his expression a careful mixture of sympathy and mild inconvenience. Wow, that's rough. All night? All night, I confirmed. The whole warehouse. It's a mess. Well, he said, I guess I'll see you Saturday morning then. There was an ease in his shoulders, a relaxation of a tension I hadn't even realized he was carrying. The second piece of the plan was Mason. His safety was paramount. He could not be in my house. He could not be in my father's house. He had to be somewhere clean. I had already spoken to Sam's mother. The arcade trip he had wanted was now a full Friday night sleepover. He was ecstatic, packing his bag on Thursday, absolutely oblivious. He was a 12-year-old boy, safe from the adult contamination I was about to catalog. Friday night arrived. I hugged Mason at Sam's front door, holding him for a second too long. Be good. I'll see you tomorrow after I sleep. Mom's got that horrible work night. I know, he said, wriggling away. Bye, Mom. I waved. I drove away, my stomach a cold, tight knot. I did not go to Halcyon Metrics. I drove to a quiet, tree-lined street in Northbridge, 2 blocks from my father's house, and parked in the deep shadow of an oak tree. I turned off my engine. The street was silent. I opened the secure app on my phone. The 2 camera feeds loaded. They were dark, bathed in the blue, ambient light of digital clocks and streetlights. I set the phone on my dashboard, plugged into a battery pack, and I waited. The hours ticked by. 7 p.m., 8 p.m. I watched shadows. Nothing. I was beginning to think I had miscalculated, that the alibi wasn't the trigger I assumed it would be. At 8:43 p.m., my phone buzzed. A push notification, sharp and sudden in the quiet car. Motion detected. Kitchen. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tapped the notification. The kitchen feed filled my screen. The overhead lights snapped on, flooding the room with sterile brightness. Margot walked into frame. She was wearing silk pajamas, a dark green. She went to the refrigerator. She looked comfortable, proprietary. A moment later, Colton followed her in. He was in his work pants but a different shirt, one I didn't recognize. My husband, in my father's kitchen, with my stepmother. They weren't looking at each other. Margot pulled out a bottle of white wine. Colton went to the cabinet and retrieved the 2 heavy-faceted crystal glasses, the ones my mother loved, the ones they always used. He's asleep, Margot said, her voice clear and crisp in the microphone. She was talking about my father. Good, Colton said. He took the bottle from her, his fingers brushing hers as he did. He poured 2 full glasses. He handed one to her. She laughed, a low, private sound. She's really gone all night? Inventory? That's what she said, Colton replied. He took a drink. Her company. She lives for that place. He said it with a casual disdain that hollowed me out. Margot turned to lean back against the counter, sipping her wine. The angle was perfect. The light from the oven hood gleamed on her hair. Pulled back from her face, and holding it in place was the heavy silver barrette, my mother's clip, engraved with E.W., my initials. It was there. It was undeniable. I held my breath. My phone was recording. Colton set his glass down. He pulled his own phone from his pocket, his back partially to the camera. He tapped the screen. "Yeah," he said into the phone. "This is Hale. I need to confirm my reservation for next week. Room 612, Crownbriar Lodge. Just confirm it. Great. Thanks." He hung up. Room 612, a standing appointment. He picked up his glass and raised it, clinking it against Margot's. To a smooth closing. Margot smiled. It was a genuine smile, full of satisfaction. "He's finally agreed to sign the final papers after the holiday," she said. "The bank is ready. Once Christmas is done, her father's papers will be settled. All of it." Her father. I was her. A problem to be managed. A detail in their paperwork. "And Elena?" Colton asked, his voice low. Margot took a slow, delicate sip of her wine. "Elena," she said, "will be taken care of. Once she's no longer a co-signer. Once the new will is filed. What can she do? Graham is tired. He just wants peace. He'll follow my lead." They stood there for another minute, in a comfortable, shared silence. They finished their wine. Colton rinsed the glasses and put them in the dishwasher. He ran his hand, just once, down her silk-covered back. Then Margot walked to the switch. "Everything will be smooth," she whispered, almost to herself. The lights clicked off. The screen went black, plunging me back into the darkness of my car, but the audio feed captured the sound of their footsteps fading down the hall, one set, then the other. I sat in the cold, silent car for a full minute, my hand gripping the phone so hard the plastic case creaked. I did not cry. I was an operations manager. I had my data. I hit download on the cloud recording. I saved the clip. I saved it again to a separate, encrypted folder. I started taking screenshots, frame by frame. Margot's face, clear as day, the silver clip, gleaming, Colton's profile as he made the call, the two glasses, side by side. I had them. I had them all. Rhea Porter did not waste time. The morning after I sent her the contingency package alpha credentials, my phone rang at 7:01 a.m. "Stonecourt Tower, noon, 45th floor, ask for Avery Kincaid. Do not bring your phone. Do not be late." She hung up. Stonecourt Tower was a spike of smoked glass and steel that punctured the skyline. It was a place designed to communicate power, a place where hourly billing rates were higher than my monthly car payment. I walked in at 11:59 a.m. Avery Kincaid was not what I expected. She wasn't an older, severe woman. She was my age, maybe slightly younger, and wore a sharply tailored gray dress. She didn't shake my hand. She just pointed to a chair in a conference room that overlooked the entire city. Rhea was already there, a laptop open, a takeaway cup of coffee untouched. "Rhea," Avery said, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of the room. "You were not exaggerant. This is a mess." "Elena," she said, turning to me, her eyes quick and analytical, like a surgeon assessing a trauma. "I have reviewed the video. I have reviewed the forged document. I have reviewed the email chain. You have been compromised on 3 fronts: marital, financial, and familial. Our response, therefore, will also be 3-pronged. She stood and walked to a whiteboard, her movements precise. "Prong 1, asset preservation," she wrote. "This is our firewall. Your father is being unduly influenced. The forgery on the Pine and Quill application gives us the lever. We will petition for an ex parte temporary restraining order on all his assets. Ex parte means they don't get to be in the room when we ask the judge for it. We allege elder exploitation, undue influence, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The forgery is the accelerant. The video is the proof of the conspiracy." Prong 2, the criminal complaint. She wrote forgery on the board in all caps. "This is our leverage against Margot. We have hired an independent, court-certified handwriting expert. He is, as we speak, comparing the forged signature from the bank PDF to a dozen samples of your real signature I had Rhea pull from public filings. His preliminary report is expected in 48 hours. Once we file a police report, Margot's leverage over your father evaporates. She becomes a liability. Prong 3, she continued. Strategic separation. This is for your husband. It will be clean, fast, and non-negotiable. The evidence of infidelity is clear. The evidence of his conspiracy with Margot to defraud your family, using your own workplace as a vehicle, is airtight. We will sever him completely. I just nodded, absorbing the strategy. It was a language I understood. This was logistics. We need to assemble the file, Avery said. We spent the next 2 hours in that room, turning my pain into a binder. The video from the kitchen, now labeled Exhibit A, Conspiracy and Corroboration of Adultery. The screenshots of Margot wearing the silver beret. Exhibit B, Misappropriation of Heirlooms. The log of my burner call to the Crown Briar Lodge, noting returning guest status. The complete email chain from Halcyon, with the M, Vale at Homewell, live address circled in red. The bank's email. My phone record of the call from David at Pine and Quill. Avery's paralegal was a blur of motion, scanning, labeling, and organizing. Avery's office has already dispatched a preservation letter to the Crown Briar Lodge, Rhea added, looking up from her laptop. It informs them they are to retain all folios, receipts, and security footage pertaining to Colton Hale and Vale, pending a formal subpoena. They know if they delete anything, it's spoliation of evidence. Good, Avery said. She capped her marker. Now, the delivery. We could file this all quietly, or we could detonate it in a controlled environment, force their hands, and capture their reactions. Christmas Eve, I said. It was the first time I'd spoken in almost an hour. Avery and Rhea looked at me. It's their deadline, I explained, my voice flat. Margot said it herself in the video. Once Christmas is done, his papers will be settled. They are planning to use the holiday as cover. They are planning to toast their success while I'm passing the gravy. It's the traditional family dinner, my father's house. Avery Kincaid almost smiled. Public humiliation is a powerful motivator, but it's also high risk. If you do this, there is no going back. Not with your father, not with your husband. The family, as you know it, will be ashes. You're sure? It's already ashes, I said. They just haven't scattered them yet. The plan was set. The confrontation would be the trigger. My first, most critical task was Mason. I drove to my sister Nora's house that evening. Nora and I were not close, but we were blood, and she had distrusted Margot from day one. I told her a partial truth. Colton and I are separating. It's bad, and I think Dad's in some financial trouble with Margot. I have to deal with it on Christmas Eve. I need Mason out. I need him safe. I need him with you, and I need you to promise me, Nora, that no one, not me, not Dad, not anyone, can get to him. Nora's eyes were sharp. She saw the truth I wasn't saying. He's safe here. Elena, turn off his phone if you have to. He's not leaving this house. You do what you have to do. I hugged her, a rare show of affection. Thank you. Back at my own house, I began the final preparation. I bought 4 standard 9x12 manila envelopes. I sat at my kitchen island, the same place where I had stacked the data, and I began to assemble the packages. Envelope 1 for Colton, Envelope 2 for Margot, Envelope 3 for my father, Graham, Envelope 4 for Lyle Bertram, the family lawyer. Avery had prepared 4 identical sets of the evidence, the bound report from the handwriting expert, which had come back. 0% probability of a match. The signature is a clear and deliberate forgery. The color screenshots from the kitchen video, the printout of the HVAC email, the hotel call log. For Colton's envelope, I added a copy of the Crown Briar room service receipt, the one for 2 glasses of wine, for Margot's. I added a glossy, 5x7 photo of her wearing my mother's silver clip at the luncheon, for my father's. I added a copy of the bank's forged signature page, with my name in its false script, for Lyle Bertram. I included a cover letter from Avery, formally notifying him of the TRO petition and the pending criminal complaint against his client's new wife. I sealed each envelope. They were heavy. They felt like bricks. The final piece was the signal. I couldn't call Avery or Rhea from that house on Christmas Eve. My phone would be watched. Avery's team set it up. It was a virtual number, linked to a simple script. I had a separate, small burner phone. When the time came, I would send a single text to that virtual number, just the number 118. The script would then take over. It would begin dialing Lyle Bertram's office number, over and over, 118 times in 30 minutes. It didn't matter if no one answered. It was Christmas Eve. The point was the call log. My phone, showing the repeated, frantic, unanswered calls, would be my proof that I had tried to alert the lawyer. Simultaneously, that 118 text would be the go signal for Avery's team, who would be on standby. They would electronically file the TRO petition with the emergency judge. They would alert the local police to the civil dispute. It was a dead man's switch, a tripwire, $118, 118 missed calls. The number of my betrayal was now the code for my response. I hid the envelopes in my work briefcase. I told Colton I'd be bringing my laptop, just in case a work emergency came up from the inventory. He had just nodded, his mind clearly elsewhere, already celebrating. I was ready. The operation was planned. The assets were in place. Christmas was 2 days away. We arrived at 5:30, precisely on time. The house I grew up in was unrecognizable, buried under an avalanche of Margot's Christmas. It was aggressively festive. The white clapboard was draped in so many flashing LED lights, it looked like an electrical fire. The scent of cinnamon and synthetic pine hit me in the driveway, thick and cloying. Inside, every surface was covered. Gold ribbon, gold-dusted pine cones, and figurines of rosy-cheeked carolers stared from the mantelpiece, the bookshelves, and every side table. It was the sterile, staged perfection of a department store display. My father greeted us at the door, his face flushed. He was already holding a glass of amber liquid. "Elena, Colton, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Come in. Come in. Margot's just finishing up." He gave me a brief, awkward hug, his blazer smelling of wool and whiskey. Colton, playing the part of the devoted son-in-law, handed my father a bottle of expensive scotch. "Merry Christmas, Graham. The place looks incredible." "Doesn't it?" Graham beamed, looking around as if seeing it for the first time. "Margot's a wizard, a total wizard." I kept my hand on the strap of my briefcase. It was heavy, weighted with the 3 manila envelopes. I placed it on the floor by the empty chair near the entryway, the one my mother always called the thinking chair. We moved into the dining room. The table was set for 4, an elaborate centerpiece of gold-sprayed ferns dominating the space, and, as I had expected, there were place cards, small, cream-colored cards with gold calligraphy, Graham at one end, Margot at the other, my mother's seat, Colton, and mine, placed neatly by his. Elena Hale. Not Whitford, Hale. I was officially, in Margot's world, an auxiliary, an attachment to another man. I was no longer a daughter of this house. "Elena, darling!" Margot swept in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a crisp white apron embroidered with a reindeer. She looked radiant, her hair perfectly styled and pinned back with a simple, elegant clip I did not recognize. She was flushed with the heat of the oven and the thrill of the evening. "You're here. Just in time. Graham, pour your daughter a drink. Colton, be a love and help me with the platter." Colton smiled, that easy, charming smile I had once mistaken for kindness. "You got it." He followed her into the kitchen. My father busied himself at the bar cart, pouring me a glass of wine I did not want. I took it. My role tonight was simple. I was the audience. I was the calm, neutral observer, waiting for the system to fail on its own terms. I was here to watch them execute their final, fatal error. The first hour was a masterpiece of social tension. We sat in the living room, the over-decorated tree blinking aggressively in the corner. We talked about the weather, We talked about the local high school football team. We talked about nothing. Colton and Margot moved with an easy, practiced rhythm, a domestic ballet. They refreshed drinks. They laughed at my father's old, tired jokes. They were a team. I sat on the sofa, my posture perfect, and I watched. I was a ghost in my own history, and they were the vibrant new owners, cheerfully painting over the walls. Finally, Margot clapped her hands together. "The turkey is ready. It just needs to be carved." She turned to me, her smile bright and artificial. "Elena, why don't you come help me in the kitchen? We can have a little girl talk." It was the signal, the isolation. Colton and my father were deep in a discussion about the stock market. Neither looked up. "Of course," I said. I stood and walked into the kitchen. The room was hot and smelled overwhelmingly of sage and rendered fat. The turkey, glistening and enormous, sat on the counter. The kitchen was exactly as it had been in the video feed. I saw the wall socket by the coffee machine. The tiny, dark eye of the camera was invisible, but I knew it was there. It was my witness. I deliberately positioned myself on the far side of the island, in its full, unobstructed view. Margot picked up the long carving knife and the matching fork. She tested the edge of the blade with her thumb. "It's a beautiful bird, Margot," I said, my voice quiet. "It is," she said. She didn't look at me. She was focused on the task. "Everything has to be perfect tonight. Graham deserves a perfect Christmas, a new start, a clean slate." She began to carve, her movements decisive, slicing through the skin. "You know, Elena," she continued, her voice conversational, "it takes a lot of work to run a house like this. To manage a man like your father, he needs stability." "I'm sure he does," I said. She paused, the knife resting on the cutting board. She looked up at me, and her polite mask dissolved. Her eyes were hard. "I set the pace here now. I am the one who keeps the rhythm. You need to understand that. You're just a guest. You come when you're invited, and you sit where you're told." The words hung in the hot air, sharp as the knife she was holding. I did not react. I looked at her, my expression neutral. In my mind, I heard Avery Kincaid's voice. "Let her provide the offense. Do not escalate. You are the reasonable party. Always." I just breathed. 1, 2, 3. "It's your house, Margot," I said simply. "No one is questioning that." My refusal to fight, my simple acknowledgement, seemed to infuriate her more than an argument would have. Her face tightened. Just then, Colton walked in. He stopped, his eyes flicking between me, standing rigid, and Margot, holding the knife. He could feel the pressure in the room. He saw the standoff. He knew exactly what was happening. He made his choice. He walked past both of us, grabbed the wine bottle from the counter, and went back into the living room. "Graham, looks like you're running low," we heard him say, his voice full of manufactured cheer. A moment later, my father's voice, thick with wine and misplaced sentiment, boomed from the other room. He was making a toast. "To Margot, and to a new life. A family needs a new reality, and she's given us one." We heard the clink of their glasses. In the kitchen, that was the signal. That was the validation Margot needed. She turned back to me, her eyes glittering. Colton came back in, leaning against the doorframe, sipping his own wine. He was here to watch. "A new reality," Margot whispered, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. She turned back to the turkey. I moved slightly to retrieve the gravy boat from the counter behind her. "Just move," she snapped, shoving me hard on the shoulder. I stumbled back, knocking into the refrigerator. I regained my balance. I said nothing. "Don't you understand?" she hissed, stepping toward me, her face contorted with a rage she no longer bothered to hide. "You don't matter anymore. This is my table, my house, my family." And then she slapped me. It was not a shove. It was a full, open-handed slap across my left cheek. The sound was a sharp, dry crack, shockingly loud in the bright kitchen. My head snapped to the side. The force of it made my ear ring. and a hot metallic sting flooded my face. The silence that followed was absolute. Colton froze, his wineglass halfway to his lips. Margot stood there, breathing hard, her hand still raised slightly. The camera in the wall socket had captured the blur of the motion, and more importantly, it had captured that terrible, definitive sound. Then, my father appeared in the doorway, drawn by the silence. He looked at me. He looked at Margot. His gaze settled on my face. I could feel the mark, a bright, blooming red handprint on my skin. He saw it. There was no question. He saw the imprint of his new wife's hand on his daughter's face. This was his moment, the moment to choose. My father looked at the floor. He looked at the bottle of wine on the counter. His hand, shaking almost imperceptibly, reached out. He picked up his glass, which was still half full, and topped it off. The glug 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 of the pouring wine, the only sound in the room. He chose his comfort. He chose his new reality. He took a long, slow drink. I turned my head, the skin on my cheek pulling tight. I looked directly at Margot. My voice was low, perfectly clear, and carried in the silence. "You just slipped up, Margot." She stared at me, her eyes wide, the anger being replaced by confusion. "You just did that," I said, in full view of the camera mounted in the hallway fixture. The change was immediate. Colton's face went white. My father's hand froze on his glass. Margot's gaze snapped from my face to the hallway, trying to see what I saw. She looked back at me, her mind racing. What did you say?" "And you," I said, turning to my father, "chose to pour more wine." The camera caught that, too. The grandfather clock in the hallway, the one my mother had wound every Sunday, chimed the hour. The sound was dry, hollow, a ticking of bones. The air in the kitchen was thick and cold, all the heat gone. I walked past them. I did not run. I walked out of the kitchen, back to the entryway. I picked up my briefcase. I opened it and took out the 3 heavy manila envelopes. I went back to the dining room, to the bar cart, and picked up the small, polished silver tray Margot used for serving drinks. I placed the 3 envelopes on the tray, one for Colton, one for Margot, one for Graham. I held the tray, my hands perfectly steady, and walked back to the kitchen doorway, where they all stood, frozen in their guilt. I walked past them. They were 3 figures frozen in the doorway, caught in the harsh light from the kitchen. My father's hand was suspended over his wine glass. Colton looked like he had been hollowed out. Margot's eyes were fixed on the hallway fixture, her mind visibly calculating angles, laws, and loopholes. The slap had broken the spell, and the word camera had created a new one. I moved into the dining room, to the perfectly set table. The gold-dusted ferns seemed to mock me. I put the silver tray down on the polished mahogany. The small click was the only sound in the house. It was louder than the ticking of the grandfather clock. It was the sound of a latch engaging. "Please," I said, my voice calm and even. "Sit down." It was not a request. It was the new order of things. Mechanically, they moved. My father stumbled into his seat at the head of the table. Colton, his face pale and waxy, sank into the chair to my right. Margot, however, did not sink. She walked stiffly to her chair, my mother's chair, and sat upright, her hands placed neatly on the table, as if she were chairing a contentious board meeting. I remained standing. I picked up the first envelope, the one marked Colton. I slid it across the table. It came to a stop against the base of his champagne flute. "Colton," I said, "yours first." He stared at it. His hands, the hands I had held for 14 years, the hands I had trusted to fix things, were trembling. "Elena, don't do this. It's Christmas Eve." "Open it," I said. He fumbled with the metal clasp, his fingers thick and useless. He ripped it open. The papers slid out. He fanned them out on the tablecloth, a hand of self-destruction. "Let me narrate for you," I said, my voice as sterile as an operations report. "The first page is a set of high-resolution stills. They're from the kitchen video, the one you and Margot filmed last Friday, when you thought I was pulling an all-nighter for inventory. He stared at the image of himself, his back to the camera, his hand on Margot's silk-covered back. He looked at the next, a clear shot of him raising his glass, his face full of conspiratorial confidence. The second page, I continued, is the room service receipt from the Crown Briar Lodge, the one from November, the one for $118.45. You told me you were alone, that the commercial install had gone sideways, but the receipt is for 2 glasses of Chardonnay and a shared dessert, charged at 11:34 p.m. to our joint account. Elena, he whispered, his eyes begging me. I am not finished. The third page is a transcript of your phone call, also from the video, the call where you confirmed your standing reservation, room 612, not the cheapest room I could find. Colton, a specific room. You are a returning guest. He finally found a spark of his old bluster, a pathetic attempt at a defense. It was business lodging. It was for the Port Lumen contract. I had to entertain the client. You know how this works. Do I? I reached into my pocket, pulled out my own phone, and pressed the screen. The room filled with their voices, clear and sharp. His voice. To a smooth closing, her voice. He's finally agreed to sign the final papers after the holiday. Once Christmas is done, her father's papers will be settled. Law of it. I pressed stop. The silence that rushed back in was devastating. Colton's defense collapsed. He physically slumped, his spine turning to water. He stared at the wood grain of the table. A convicted man. I turned my head. Margot. I slid her envelope across the table. It spun once and landed perfectly in front of her. She did not fumble. Her movements were sharp, angry. She tore the flap open and pulled the documents out with a single, violent gesture. Yours is more complex, I said. The first item is a photograph, a 5x7, glossy. You at the Friends of the Library luncheon last week. You look lovely. You're holding a glass of champagne, and you're wearing my mother's silver beret. She flinched. Her hand went to her hair, which was, for once, held by a simple pin. The beret, I continued, my voice low and cold, is engraved, Elena Whitford, my mother, my namesake. You took it from her private jewelry box. Your father gave me access to everything, she snapped, her voice high and tight. He said I should use what was just lying around, collecting dust. The second page, I said, ignoring her, is a copy of a pawn ticket. It's from a shop in Riverton. It is dated 2 years ago, long before you and my father were married. It's for one engraved silver beret, monogram E. Avery Kincaid's investigator found it in under an hour. The jeweler kept impeccable records, including the item's unique serial number, which matches the one on my mother's original appraisal. You didn't just find it. Margot, you stole it. You pawned it. And then, after you had secured your position here, you stole it a second time from the box you'd already looted, just so you could wear it like a crown. The color drained from her face. She was, for the first time, speechless. The third item, I said, is the email chain, the one from my company, the one where my husband offered Halcyon Metrics an HVAC contract at a 30% discount, a bid you were secretly CC'd on, using your private address, M. Vale at Homewell, Live. You two weren't just planning a life, you were committing felony fraud, using my father's assets to fund it and my professional reputation to launder it. She looked at the email, at her ghost address, and I saw her mind lock onto the one defense she thought she had. You can't prove any of this. It's circumstantial. And you spied on me. That's illegal. I am not finished, I said. I turned to my father. He was shaking his head, his eyes squeezed shut, as if he could make it all go away. No, Elena, no, please, it's Christmas. Open your envelope, Dad. He couldn't. His hands were trembling so badly he knocked over his wine glass. Red wine spread across the white tablecloth like a wound. No one moved to clean it up. I tore the envelope open for him. I laid the papers out on the clean part of the cloth. "This," I said, tapping the first document, "is the draft of your new will, the one Lyle Bertram's office prepared, the one you and Margot went to sign technical updates on." He squinted, his eyes blurry with wine and denial. "It's just housekeeping, Elena," Lyle said. "This line here, Dad," I said, my finger jabbing the page. "Section 4, the clause that dissolves the Whitford Lane Ancestral Trust, the one Mom's grandfather set up, it transfers this house, the land, everything, into a new joint trust, a trust that grants Margot full, irrevocable control upon your cognitive incapacity or death. She wouldn't just be your widow, Dad. She would be your sole proprietor. I would be nothing. Mason would be nothing." He stared at the black and white text. He stared at the words, cognitive incapacity. "He knew!" Margot shrieked, standing up so fast her chair screeched. "He agreed! Graham, tell her, we discussed it. You wanted me to be secure." "But you needed it faster," I said, my voice cutting her off. I held up the next document. "This is the loan application from Pine and Quill Bank for a $200,000 line of credit against this house, but they couldn't file it without the consent of the primary heir. They needed me." I laid the page in front of my father, in the spreading pool of his wine. "That," I said, "is my name, Elena Whitford Hale, but I never saw this document. I never signed it." "It's a lie!" Margot screamed. "You're trying to poison him!" "And the final page, Dad," I said, my voice ringing with finality. I placed the last document on the stack. "This is the certified report from the handwriting expert. It compares the forgery on the bank document to 12 different samples of my real signature. The conclusion is on page 2. 0% probability of a match. He calls it a clumsy but deliberate simulation. Your wife forged my name to steal your house from under you before the ink on your new will was even dry." The room was silent. The only sound was my father's ragged breathing. Margot was pale, but her eyes were blazing. "You have no proof. That's junk. You're a bitter, jealous daughter who couldn't stand to see her father happy." "I have everything," I said, "and I have already used it, a complete, duplicate copy of every file in those envelopes, including the full-length kitchen video and the audio you just heard, was delivered by bonded messenger to Lyle Bertram's office this morning. He has it. He is no longer just your lawyer, Dad. He is a material witness, and another complete set," I said, my eyes locking with Margot's, "is in the possession of my new counsel, Avery Kincaid, at Stonecourt Tower. She is handling the criminal referral for the forgery and the petition for an emergency injunction against all your assets." The blood red of the wine, the gold of the decorations, the warmth of the Christmas lights, it all vanished. The color of the room changed. It was not Christmas. It was the flat, cold, institutional gray of a legal filing. The air smelled not of roasted turkey and pine, but of ink, fear, and consequences. I let the word referral hang in the air, a toxic cloud of sulfur and ink settling over the ruined Christmas dinner. Margot's face, which had been pale, was now mottled with rage. Her bravado was gone, replaced by the raw, cornered look of an animal that sees the cage door closing. Colton was a ghost. He stared at the spreading wine stain on the white tablecloth, his focus absolute, as if he could will himself into that dark, spreading void and disappear. My father just looked old, his hands flat on the table, palms down, a gesture of final, pathetic surrender. This was the moment, the trigger. While their world was imploding, I reached into the pocket of my coat, which was still slung over the thinking chair by the door. My fingers closed around the small, cold, cheap burner phone. I pulled it out, shielding it with my body. I opened the blank message screen. I typed 3 numbers, 118. I pressed send. The trap was live. I walked back to the table. I took my real phone, the one they all recognized, from my briefcase. I placed it on the mahogany, face up, next to the edge of the wine stain. The screen was dark. "You're lying," Margot hissed. Her voice was a low, venomous rasp. She was trying to regain control of the room. "You're a child. You fabricated all of this. This is a performance. You're trying to blackmail us. Graham, she's trying to blackmail us. Call the police." "Am I?" I asked. As if summoned. My phone vibrated. It was not a gentle buzz. It was a hard, angry rattle against the solid wood. A sound that drilled into the silence. The screen lit up. A push notification. Cloud sync. Evidence package alpha. Move. Upload complete. A second later, another buzz. Cloud sync. Evidence package alpha. PDF. Upload complete. Another. Cloud sync. All files have been uploaded. Folder permissions are now locked. The system is automated. "Margot," I said, my voice level. "When I sent the signal, the complete files, including the audio of you slapping me and my father's decision to pour more wine instead of intervening, were uploaded to a secure, encrypted server. Avery Kincaid has the key. Rhea Porter has the key. The trustee of Mason's College Fund has the key. It's locked. It cannot be edited. It cannot be recalled. It can only be forwarded." Margot's eyes widened. She understood the word locked. Then my phone began to buzz again. A new rhythm. The screen lit up. "Calling. Bertram Chambers." It rang twice, then cut out. A second later, it started again. "Calling. Bertram Chambers." "What are you doing?" my father whispered. He stared at the phone as if it were a snake. "Stop it. Stop calling him. It's Christmas Eve." "I'm not doing anything." "Dad," I said. "It's the script. It's the dead man's switch. It's going to call his office 118 times in the next 30 minutes. It's documenting my repeated, frantic attempts to reach you, my lawyer, to report a crime, to report the assault, to report the forgery. It's building the log. It's the sound of the deadline you and Margot were so eager to meet." The phone rang again, buzzed, and cut out. Missed call. 3, it started again. Calling. Bertram Chambers. Missed call. 4. The rhythm was brutal. Buzz, silence, buzz, silence. Colton, finally, moved. He pushed his chair back, the legs scraping a harsh protest against the polished wooden floor. I'm not doing this. I'm leaving." He stood up, unsteady, his face slick with sweat. "This is insane. You're insane, Elena." "I would advise you to sit down, Colton," I said. "I'm going." He started walking toward the hallway, fumbling in his pocket for his keys. "You can't keep me here." My phone buzzed again, interrupting the dialing. This time, it was a text message. I glanced at the screen. It was from Rhea. I read it aloud, my voice projecting into the room. "Package received. TRO petition filed with the emergency judge. Signature is pending. Oh, and this part is for you. Colton. Local PD dispatch and neighborhood watch have been alerted to a potential domestic disturbance and civil dispute at this address. Advised to log any vehicles leaving the property." Colton froze. His hand was on the front doorknob. I continued reading. "They will be writing down your license plate. Colton, they'll be documenting that you fled the scene of a civil complaint. How will that look when Avery Kincaid files the marital fraud suit on Monday morning?" He didn't turn around. He just stood there, his back to me, trapped between the flashing, mocking lights of the Christmas tree on the lawn and the unseen surveillance of the entire neighborhood. He was a man with nowhere to go. After a long, terrible moment, he took his hand off the doorknob. He turned around, his face ashen, and slowly, like a man being led to his own execution. He walked back to the table. He didn't sit. He just stood behind his chair, defeated. The room was a pressure cooker. The only sounds were the incessant buzzing of my phone as it dialed Bertram Chambers, missed call 12, and the loud, dry ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Oh. Tick, buzz, tick, buzz. My father broke. He looked at me, his eyes wet with wine and a terrifying, clarifying fear. "Elena, child, what? What do you want? What is the price? Just tell us what you want." I looked at him, at the man who chose his comfort over his blood. "I want 3 things. They are not negotiable. This is not a discussion. This is the new operations plan." I held up one finger. 1. You will contact Lyle Bertram first thing in the morning. You will stop all proceedings on the new will. You will immediately, and in writing, reinstate the original will, the one my mother signed off on, the one that protects this house and the ancestral trust, the one that protects Mason's future. I held up a second finger. 2. Margot will retrieve every single item she has borrowed or found that belonged to my mother. The silver clip, the pearl earrings, my mother's wedding band, which I know you took from the velvet box. Margot, because it's not there. You will place them on this table before you go to bed tonight. Margot let out a sound, a strangled, incredulous laugh. "Go to bed? I live here. You insane." I held up my third finger, cutting her off. 3. This marriage is over, Margot. You will pack an overnight bag, and you will leave this house tonight. Colton, I said, turning to him. You will go back to our house, pack an overnight bag, and you will leave. You are not to stay there. You will go to a hotel. I want both of you gone by midnight. No, my father whispered. His hand was shaking so badly it rattled against the table. Elena, you can't. I'll be alone. You were alone when you let her forge my name. Dad, I said, my voice flat. You were alone when you watched her hit me. You just didn't realize it. Margot finally found her voice, the one I recognized from the video, the one full of condescending, absolute power. You have no right, she sneered, her confidence returning in a desperate, ugly surge. You have no power here. You are a liar and a fabricator. You've created this theater. This is illegal. You've recorded me in my own home. Graham, call the police. Tell them your daughter is a trespasser, that she's trying to extort you. My phone buzzed again. Missed call, 47. This time, I picked it up. I tapped the screen. You're right, Margot. Let's talk about the law. I dialed Avery Kincaid's number. It rang exactly once. Avery, you're on speaker. Avery's voice filled the room, as cold and sharp as the glass in the Stone Court Tower. Good evening, Graham. Good evening, Ms. Vale. Mr. Hale. I'm Avery Kincaid, counsel for Elena Whitford. This is harassment, Margot yelled at the phone. It's Christmas Eve. You can't do this. On the contrary, Ms. Vale, Avery's voice continued, crisp and unbothered. We are operating entirely within the bounds of Waverly state law. Specifically, I'd like to draw your attention to State Penal Code. Section 51.5, fraudulent use of identifying information, which, when combined with Section 72.4, theft of assets from a dependent adult, carries a mandatory minimum sentence. The forgery on the Pine and Quill application meets that standard perfectly. Margot was silent. As for the recording, Avery continued, Waverly is a one-party consent state, as Ms. Whitford was a party to the conversation where you assaulted her. That recording is 100% admissible in both civil and criminal court. The kitchen video, however, is even simpler. It has no audio. It just shows you and Mr. Hale in a private conspiracy, proving the affair and the coordination of your fraud. We're quite confident in its admissibility. Avery had vaporized her last line of defense. I looked at all of them. 3 faces, each a different shade of ruin. There is one more thing, I said, my voice dropping. Mason? My father's head snapped up. Mason? Where is he? Is he... He is safe, I said, cutting him off with a look. He is at my sister Nora's house. He is, as of an hour ago, completely unreachable. His phone is off. Nora has been instructed not to answer her door or her phone for anyone, especially not for any of you. He is not a pawn. He is not a bargaining chip. You will not use him as an intermediary. You will not call him to cry. You will not tell him your side of the story. He is insulated. He is protected. That is the one thing I will not, under any circumstances, negotiate. The finality of it, the removal of their last potential weapon, was the blow that broke them. Just then, another sound began, cutting through the rhythmic buzzing of my phone. Missed call, 94. It was faint at first, then louder. It was the sound of the church bells from St. Jude's, 2 blocks over, ringing in the midnight mass. A deep, solemn bong. My phone buzzed. Calling. Bertram Chambers. Missed call, 95. Bong. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed, its own thin, metallic bell joining the chorus. Bong, buzz, tick. It was the sound of a countdown reaching 0, the sound of the trap closing, the sound of their time running out. The 118th call was being placed. I looked at Colton, a man I no longer knew. I looked at Margot, a thief, and then I looked at my father, the man who had poured the wine. Now it's your turn, Dad. My phone screen went dark. The 118th call had failed. The mechanism was complete. The church bells from St. Jude's finished their toll, leaving a silence that was heavier and more profound than the noise had been. The room smelled of spilled wine and hot, congealing fat. My father sat at the head of the table, a man enthroned on his own ruin. He was breathing in short, shallow gasps, his face gray. Margot was rigid, her eyes black with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. Colton was still standing, trapped between the door and the table, a man who had already dissolved. My father's hands, which had been rattling against the table, finally went still. He looked at me, and the fog of wine, the years of willful denial, finally cleared. He saw me. He saw the red handprint on my cheek, now a deep, ugly purple. He saw the cold, clear finality in my eyes. She was a whirlwind, he whispered, the words tumbling out, a pathetic, leaking confession. After your mother, the house was so quiet, just the clock, and then she came. He looked at Margot, not with love, but with a kind of terrified awe. She handled everything, the bills, the house, the schedules. I didn't have to think. It felt warm again. And the wine helped, I said. It was not a question. Yes, he admitted, his voice cracking. The wine helped. The nights are long. I'm an old man. Elena, I was so afraid of being alone. She said the papers were just to protect us, to make us a real family. I was foggy. I didn't read them closely. You read them, Dad, I said. You just chose not to understand them. I reached into my briefcase, past the separation papers, and pulled out the photograph, the one of my mother and father on their wedding day, trapped in the cheap, shiny black frame. I put it on the table in front of him, on top of the forged bank document. This, I said, is the truth. You let her do this. He squinted, trying to focus. The scratch. Dad, look at it. I pointed to the thin white line that cut across my mother's smile. You didn't just let her take my seat. You didn't just let her steal my mother's things. You let her erase her. You took her down from the mantelpiece yourself, and you let her be put in this. You did this. He recoiled, as if the photograph were hot. No, it was just a frame. It was never just a frame, I said. He began to cry then, a terrible, dry, choking sound. I didn't let them. Elena, not all the way. I kept it. I frowned. Kept what? Colton looked up. Margot's head snapped toward him. What? What did you keep, Graham? The old will, he whispered, his eyes fixed on me, pleading. Lyle Bertram told me to destroy the original, the old one, after we signed the new draft. He gave it to me in an envelope, but I couldn't. What are you talking about? Margot's voice was sharp. I have a box at the Riverton Credit Union, a small one. I put it in there. Last week. I told myself it was just in case. Just in case. I was afraid. A small, pathetic act of cowardice. He had known, on some level, exactly what she was, and he had been too weak to stop her. So he had simply made a secret copy. It wasn't virtue. It was just a different kind of weakness. But it was, as Avery Kincaid would say, a lever. He knew, I said, looking at Margot. He knew you were a thief. He just didn't have the courage to say it to your face. Margot looked at him, her expression a mask of pure contempt. You coward. He's a coward, I agreed. But you, Margot, are a performer, and you were so proud of your performance. I turned my phone's screen toward her. The kitchen video, Margot, the one from last Friday. I was reviewing it again this morning. You were so happy. You were toasting. You were wearing the silver clip, and you did something foolish. I swiped to a new file, a video enhancement. You took out your phone. You were texting, and then you turned, and for just a second, you held it up to take a selfie. But the oven was off. The black glass door was a perfect mirror. I hit play. The screen was dark, but you could see the reflection in the oven glass. Margot, her face alight with triumph, her phone held up, and in her hair, the EW barrette, catching the light from the refrigerator. You were documenting your win, I said. You were taking a victory photo, wearing my mother's monogram, in her kitchen, while you conspired to steal her husband's house. You're not just a thief, Margot. You're a narcissist, and you left the evidence in the reflection. I turned the phone off. The room was a tomb. Now, Dad, I said, my voice hardening. It's time to fix it. Anything, he sobbed. Anything, Elena. Get up. He looked at me, confused. What? Get up. He pushed his chair back and, using the table for leverage, hauled himself to his feet. He was unsteady. Where are we going? Back to the kitchen, I said. Back to the scene of the crime. You two, I said, looking at Colton and Margot. Do not move. Do not speak. I walked behind my father, hurting him. He stumbled into the kitchen, which was still lit by the harsh overhead light, the turkey sitting on the counter, cold and grotesque. Stand there, I commanded. I pointed to the spot by the counter, the exact spot where he had stood, watched me get slapped, and poured his wine. Elena, please. I took out my phone. I opened the video recorder. The small red light came on. I need a statement. Dad, for the record, for Avery Kincaid. It's the only way she'll consider holding off on the criminal charges for elder fraud. It's your one, last chance to prove you are a cooperating witness, not a co-conspirator. He saw the red light. He nodded, tears streaming down his face, into the lines around his mouth. Repeat after me, I said, my voice cold and precise as a legal document. Graham Whitford. Graham Whitford, he choked out. Do hereby acknowledge that on this date, December 24th, I witnessed my wife, Margot Vale, commit an act of physical violence against my daughter, Elena Whitford. He repeated it, the words tearing out of him. I acknowledge that I witnessed this assault and I failed to intervene or render aid. I chose instead to pour myself another drink. Oh, God, he wept, but he said it. I chose to pour myself another drink. I further state, I continued, that I am stopping all changes to my estate, effective immediately. I will void the new draft of my will. I will cooperate fully to restore the original ancestral trust. He recited the words, a broken man giving his confession. I pressed stop. I saved the file. Thank you for your cooperation, Dad. I walked back into the dining room. The three of them were exactly as I had left them, a living tableau of failure. Colton finally broke. He moved toward me, his hands open, pleading. Elena, please, 14 years. It was a mistake, a stupid, Terrible mistake. She got in my head, but it's us. 14 years. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. I looked at him, at this stranger. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a vast, cold, operational emptiness. I walked to my briefcase. I pulled out the last envelope, the one I had prepared for him. I didn't hand it to him. I dropped it on the table. It's over. Colton? He stared at the envelope. What? What is that? It's the legal separation agreement. I signed it this morning. It's already been notarized. It outlines the division of assets, which, given your conspiracy to defraud my family, is weighted heavily in my favor. It gives you 24 hours to sign and return it. An attorney from Avery's firm will be in contact with yours on Monday. Or, if you prefer, we can let the judge decide your share in open court after we submit the video of you and Margot in the kitchen. He stared at the envelope, his mouth open. Margot lunged. She didn't lunge at me. She didn't lunge at my father. She lunged for the papers. Her hand, with its perfectly manicured nails, shot across the table to rip the document in half, to destroy the process, to buy herself one more second of time. No. A hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. It was my father's hand. His grip was surprisingly strong. He caught her, his fingers digging into her skin, stopping her inches from the envelope. It was the first time he had ever chosen me over her. It was the first time he had acted. Margot froze, her face a mask of shock, looking at his hand on her arm. He held it there, his whole body shaking, but he did not let go. No more, he whispered. No more. He released her, shoving her hand back. She cradled her wrist, her eyes burning. She had lost him. She had lost everything. I let the moment sit. Then I looked at her. The clip, I said. She stared at me, uncomprehending. What? My mother's clip, the barrette. I know you brought it. You were going to wear it tonight, weren't you? After I left, to celebrate. It's in your purse. Get it. She didn't move. Get it, Margot. Put it on the table. Slowly, her face dead, she reached for her designer handbag, which was sitting on the floor beside her. She unzipped it. She reached inside. Her hand came out, and there, in her palm, was the heavy, gleaming silver barrette. On the table, I said. She placed it on the mahogany, next to the wine stain. I walked over. I picked it up. The metal was cold. I turned, and using the reflection in the dark dining room window, I unpinned my own simple clip and fastened my mother's, my barrette in my hair. It felt heavy. It felt right. It was an anchor. I turned back to them. I walked past them, into the kitchen, to the main light switch. The room was lit only by the under-cabinet lights, the ones that were on in the video. I flipped the switch. The main fluorescent fixture hummed to life, flooding the room with a harsh, unforgiving white light. It was brutal. It exposed everything. The streaks of grease on the stainless steel, the fingerprints on the cabinet doors, the congealed fat on the abandoned turkey, the smears of flour on the floor. It was a perfect kitchen, and the light showed it was a complete and utter mess. The fluorescent light in the kitchen hummed, a flat, sterile sound. It was the only sound. Now that the church bells had stopped, my father, my husband, and my stepmother were ghosts in a tableau of their own making. My father looked broken in the doorway. Colton was a pale, sweating statue by the dining table. Margot was pure, distilled rage, her hands clenched by her sides. The doorbell rang. It was not a festive jingle bell sound. It was a sharp, two-note chime. It was the sound of an appointment. Everyone flinched. Margot's head snapped toward the door, a new, wild flicker of panic in her eyes. "Who is that? Did you call the police?" "I didn't have to," I said. "I invited counsel." She was asked to wait outside until the confrontation was complete. I walked to the front door, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I opened it. Avery Kincaid was standing on the porch. She wore a dark wool coat, her face perfectly calm. as if she were arriving for a 9 a.m. meeting. She held a black leather portfolio. The cold night air swirled in around her, clean and sharp, cutting through the hot, cloying smell of the room. "Elena," she said, her voice quiet. "Am I interrupting dessert?" "You're right on time," I said. I stepped back, and Avery Kincaid entered my father's house. She moved with an absolute, unshakable authority. Her gaze swept the room, cataloging the scene in a single, practiced glance. The spilled wine, the accusing envelopes, the 3 shattered figures. "Avery Kincaid," she said, her voice projecting into the silence. "I am counsel for Ms. Whitford. I am here to serve these documents." She walked to the dining table. "Graham Whitford?" My father, still leaning in the kitchen doorway, could only nod. Avery placed a thick, bound document on the table. "This is a temporary restraining order, signed by Judge Alistair Hayes 20 minutes ago on emergency petition. It has already been filed. It freezes all your assets. Graham, this house, your accounts, your portfolios, nothing moves, nothing is sold, nothing is transferred, everything is locked. Pending a full hearing on the charges of elder exploitation and conspiracy to commit fraud." She then turned, her focus landing on Margot like a physical weight. "Ms. Vale, this order names you specifically as the party exerting undue influence. As such, it legally requires you to maintain a cooling-off distance. You must vacate this property immediately." "You can't," Margot whispered. It was the first sound she had made. "You can't. This is my home. It's Christmas Eve. It's Christmas." "It's a judicial order," Avery said, her voice flat. "It is not a request. I have 2 officers from the Avalon precinct on standby at the end of the driveway. They are here to prevent a further breach of the peace. If you are not in your car, with your personal effects, in 30 minutes, they will escort you from the premises. Your choice." As the words "escort you" landed, my phone, still on the table, buzzed with an incoming video call. The name on the screen made my father let out a small, strangled sound. Lyle Bertram. "It seems," I said, "that the lawyer you've had for 30 years has finished reviewing his Christmas package." I answered the call and placed the phone on the table, on speaker. Lyle Bertram's face appeared. He was in his study, a single green lamp casting a harsh light on his face. He looked old, tired, and deeply, profoundly angry. "Graham," he said, his voice a gravelly rasp, "what in God's name have you done?" Lyle, my father began. "I have the documents. Graham, I have the video. I have the forgery report. I have been calling your cell phone for the last half hour, and it's been going straight to voicemail." "He's here, Mr. Bertram," Avery Kincaid said, stepping into the phone's view. "Avery Kincaid, counsel for Ms. Whitford." Lyle's eyes widened slightly. He knew the name. "Ms. Kincaid. I see. Then you are aware, as of this moment, I am ceasing all work on the updated estate plan. It is suspended indefinitely. Graham, I am advising you that I have received credible evidence of fraud and undue influence, and I will be cooperating fully with any investigation. This is a disgrace. I will be in my office on the 26th. He disconnected. The screen went black. The last stone had been placed. The old guard, the one they thought they controlled, had just validated the entire case. Now, there was only the cleanup, the surrender. I turned to Colton. He was staring at the separation agreement I had dropped on the table, the one my father's hand had protected. "Colton," I said, "it's time to sign." He looked at me, his eyes hollow. He was searching for the woman he had married, the one who organized their schedules, the one who had loved him. She was not here. "Elena, please," he whispered. 14 years. It was a mistake, a stupid, terrible mistake. She got in my head. It was the money. We can fix this. I know we can. Counseling. You made your choice in that kitchen. Colton, I said, when you poured my father's wine, You made it at the Crown Briar Lodge, in room 612. You made it when you used my name at my company to defraud my family. This is not a mistake. This is your character." Avery Kincaid stepped forward and produced a heavy, expensive-looking fountain pen from her portfolio. "Sign it, Mr. Hale," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion. "Or we will see you in civil court on Monday for the marital fraud suit. And I assure you, my firm does not lose fraud suits. This document is, by far, your cleaner exit." He looked at the pen. He looked at Avery. He looked at me. He was a man with no moves left. He took the pen. His hand was shaking so badly that the first stroke of his name was a long, jagged line. He bent over the table and scrawled his signature, signing away 14 years of our life. "Your keys," I said. He didn't speak. He reached into his pocket, the one he had fumbled for at the door. He pulled out his key ring, the key to our house, the key to his truck, the key to the life he had just forfeited. He placed them on the table with a small, metallic click. "You have 24 hours to retrieve your personal effects from the house," I said. "Avery's office will coordinate a time with you. A third party will be present. After that, anything you leave behind will be considered abandoned." He just nodded. He picked up his coat from the chair. He did not look at Margot. He did not look at my father. He walked to the front door, opened it, and disappeared into the cold, dark Christmas morning. I turned to my father. He was watching the door close. He looked small and terrified. Avery, ever efficient, placed a new document in front of him. "Graham," she said, her voice softening just a fraction, "this is a voluntary declaration. It states that you are of sound mind and acting of your own free will. It confirms that you wish to preserve your original last will and testament, voiding all recent drafts. It also," she said, tapping one line, "assigns Elena as your durable power of attorney for all medical decisions, effective immediately, superseding all previous assignments." "Yes," my father said, his voice thick. "Yes, of course. Anything." He took the pen that Colton had just used. He signed the document that would save his own house. Only Margot was left. She was standing by her chair, her arms crossed, her face a mask of stone. She was defeated, but she was unbroken. "Ms. Vale," Avery said, checking her watch, "you have 20 minutes. "I'll go," Margot said, her voice flat. "But this is not over. You'll be hearing from my lawyers." "I look forward to it," Avery replied. "I'm sure they'll be fascinated by the forgery report and the video from the oven door. Oh," she added, as if as an afterthought, "I will also need the other items you misappropriated, the pearl earrings, and Mrs. Whitford's original wedding band." Margot's eyes flashed with a final, ugly fire. She grabbed her handbag from the floor, unzipped it, and pulled out a small, blue velvet pouch. She threw it on the table. "Take your dusty old junk." She turned and started to walk toward the stairs, presumably to pack her bag. "One last thing," I said. She stopped, her back to me. "I'm not finished with you," I said. I walked toward her, closing the space between us until I could smell her perfume. "You put your hand on me. In my father's house. You assaulted me." She turned around slowly. "What do you want, Elena? You've taken everything. You want more money?" "I want an apology," I said. She let out a short, sharp laugh. "An apology?" "A clear one," I said. "For the record, for the assault, you will say you are sorry for striking me." Margot looked at me, then at Avery, who had already taken her phone out and activated its audio recorder. "I would strongly advise you to comply, Ms. Vale," Avery said. "A formal apology, witnessed by counsel, goes a long way toward convincing my client not to file the criminal assault charges that are currently pending her approval. It shows remorse." Margot stared at me. Her jaw was tight, a muscle jumping in her cheek. She was calculating. She was trapped. She forced the words through her teeth, each one a piece of glass. "I am sorry for striking you." "Noted," Avery Kincaid said, Stopping the recording. Thank you for your cooperation. You have 15 minutes. Margot said nothing else. She turned, her back perfectly rigid, and walked up the stairs. The church bells had long since stopped. It was officially Christmas Day. In the dining room, the elaborate chocolate dessert, the one meant to celebrate their victory, sat untouched on the sideboard. It would never be served. Avery Kincaid closed her portfolio. I'll see myself out. Elena, I'll have the officers wait for Ms. Vale at the end of the driveway. Call me in the morning. Thank you, Avery, I said. She nodded once, a gesture of absolute competence, and let herself out. The front door clicked shut, the sound final. My father was still at the table, his head in his hands, surrounded by the legal documents that had just saved him. I walked past him. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to my sister. Nora. It's done. Mason is safe. Let him sleep in. We'll have pancakes tomorrow. I put the phone in my pocket. I went into the kitchen. The harsh white light exposed everything. The congealed, abandoned turkey, the empty wine glasses, the smears of flour. I looked at the dining room table, at the dark, spreading stain of my father's spilled wine on the white tablecloth. I went to the sink, picked up a sponge, and ran it under the cold water. I walked back to the table and began to blot at the stain. My father didn't look up. I stopped. I looked past him, at the dark, polished steel of the refrigerator door. I could see my reflection in the metallic sheen. It was distorted, but it was me. I saw the silver barrette, my barrette, gleaming in my hair. I was not the guest. I was not the one to be managed. I was not the daughter who had been pushed from her seat at the head of the table. I was the one who had cleared the table. I was the one who had pulled my chair back. My phone, in my pocket, was dark. It was silent. The 118 calls were finished. The system was stable. The operation was complete. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am always wondering where these stories land. So please, drop a comment below and let me know where you are listening from in the world. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. If you felt this, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories and like this video, and please, support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people who need to hear it.